from the Grand Ballroom of the Sherman House in Chicago, Illinois. It's the finals of the first U.S. Open Pocket Billiards Championship under the auspices of the Billiard Congress of America. Hi friends, how are you? I'm Joe Wilson speaking to you from the Grand Ballroom of the Sherman House in Chicago, where in just a moment we are going to have for you the playing of the first U.S. Open Pocket Billiards Championship in years, sponsored by the Billiard Congress of America. From 26 excellent performers here representing state and metropolitan champions, the field has been whittled down to the final two. And we are ready to go. Joe Balsis on the right, Irving Crane on the left. The third man in your picture, Bob Sterling, who will act as the referee of this match. This being 14-1 continuous pocket billiards championship form, these men will lag for the break. The man putting the cue ball closest to the top rail will win the lag. Referee Sterling to determine it, and it looks probably as though Mr. Balsis has won the lag, and he may elect to break himself or force Mr. Crane to break, inasmuch as it is rather difficult to call a ball that you will pocket on this break. It is good strategy to force your opponent to break. Now, on the break, for it to be a legitimate break, Mr. Crane must drive two balls to the rail and the cue ball. And the trick is to do it without opening up a shot. There are the two in the cue ball. Now let's see if he left anything.
Safety complete. Count nothing for Mr. Crane.
This is, in essence, a safety. It counts nothing for Mr. Crane, and the innings now begin with Mr. Balsis at the table. He has 15 balls on the table, 14 of which he must run. Then he will live one ball in position for his break shot. As he pockets that ball, he will attempt to put English on the cue ball, to put it into the rack, and thereby break them up. His object ball, the 5 ball. This is a long shot, as you see, and will not be easy. There's his point. So it is 1-0, Mr. Balsis, on the run of 1. Now the point is to work off these balls as he can. Position play being the all-important phase of the game at this point. In that case, the follow English going into the cluster, he didn't break them up quite as well as he might have wanted to there. Has that cluster, as you see, still pretty tight. Now, when these men were playing each other this afternoon, especially as they got into the late stages of the game and they began to play defensively, they played a very tight cluster, just picking off the balls around the perimeter. Pockets the 6 ball for a run of 4. It's 4-0, Mr. Balsis on the run of 4. 7 ball at the head rail. Follows back to be in a position on the 5. Now, pretty soon, he is going to have to get into that rack. And unless he chooses to use the 14 ball, he has no break ball as yet. But, as you see, he has broken them up somewhat now, and there is one out there that could be used. The 13 ball could serve. Here, of course, the secret is position play. Playing the cue ball in such a way on your shot that you always line up behind another one. 7-0, Mr. Balsis on a run of 7.
8.
The ball he just passed there is the 13 ball that I spoke of, that I think he might choose to use as his break ball. Combination. 9 off the 8. Oh, off the 13. He used the 13 for his combination. So, he has used up his break ball. However, the 13 is pretty well positioned there again, as is the 10. They are the two with the big stripes on them. Mr. Crane here in the unenviable position of waiting for a chance to get to the table. And any time a man like Crane or Balsis steps to the table, you can figure a run of anywhere from 50 balls on up. They do not miss much.
10.
Makes it 10. 10 to nothing, Mr. Balsis on the run of 10. 4 to shoot before he must go through the rack. Mr. Balsis, a very pleasant, jovial-looking man when he is not playing, but a tremendous force when he's playing. You see if you get this impression.
11.
11 to nothing, Mr. Balsis on the run of 11. Now he has
13 ball.
a 13 ball going to play it off. He'll have to open up this cluster now. And he missed them. He missed it. Up to the head rail he goes, and now he has, as you see it, that triangle there. They're all in the rack, and we may have to go to safety. Wow. He's going to try a combination 8 ball in the corner. That's the dark one right there at the bottom of the triangle. And I don't know whether this is going to be a rail first or a direct shot. A rail first, bank, and it fails. And Mr. Balsis fails. And so the run ends with 12. And Mr. Balsis sits down at the table with a lead of 12 to nothing. And that brings Mr. Crane to the table. 4 ball, his object. The 8 ball will have to be his break ball. The 11 ball is in the rack, where the balls will be racked. If you look very closely, you'll see pencil lines there that are part of the rules. See it right there, right off the foot spot. That's the foot spot, that little circle that you see there. And there are pencil lines. They mark those on the outside of the rack before the start of competition, so that the players are sure the balls are racked exactly parallel to the foot rail. And it is 12 to nothing, check, 12 to 2. Mr. Balsis on a run of 2 by Mr. Crane at the table. He will have to get into the rack off this 8 ball. A side pocket. Break, look at the English on it. Is he going to make it? He hasn't got very much speed. No, sir, he missed it. He missed it and he scratched in addition. That means he loses the ball that he pocketed. He loses another point, and he will be 1 point and the score now. And look at the expression here. He is 12 to 1, Mr. Balsis over Mr. Crane, with Mr. Balsis coming to the table. Now, Mr. Balsis has a very unenviable situation here also because he has no break ball. So he's going to play a safety. Now, in a safety, you must drive an object ball to the rail or hit an object ball and drive your cue ball to the rail off of it. He did not do that. It's a scratch, a foul. He loses a point. It's 11 to 1. Mr. Crane also does not complete a legitimate safety. It's a scratch against him. He loses a point. It is 11 to nothing. If you take 3 consecutive scratches without an attempt to shoot a pocketed ball or safety in between, you will lose 15 points and the 1 on the shot, so that you can lose a total of 18 points on 3 consecutive scratches. Mr. Balsis here could possibly play a safety here. All he has to do is just touch a ball. Now let's see whether or not he does. It's the referee's judgment. It's a scratch. It is not a safety. It's a foul. He loses another point. The score is now 10 to nothing. Mr. Balsis over Mr. Crane. Mr. Balsis has 1 scratch. Mr. Crane has 2. Mr. Crane at the table, knowing that if he incurs another scratch now, it will cost him 18 points. Safety, he must hit that object ball. Did. Drives the cue ball to the rail. And he didn't open up that cluster very much that I can see. So his board is cleared of the fouls. He may now do anything he wants to. The score is 10-0 still, as you see. Mr. Balsis over Mr. Crane, with Mr. Balsis at the table. Mr. Balsis has 2 scratches against him, so that a third scratch would cost him 16 points. 15 for the third scratch and 1 for the scratch itself.
Safety.
Safety. He must either... He's going to attempt to play the 1 ball in the side pocket. That's the one on the end there, the light one. Holy mackerel, and he made it. Beautiful shot. So, that breaks Mr. Balsis out of the cocoon. And the safety and scratch strategy has been won by Mr. Balsis. Mr. Balsis now with 11-0, actually on a run of 1. But what has he to shoot? As you see, in attempting to make that difficult shot, he wasn't able to play any position for himself, and he's right back in the rack. That's his cue ball with a little dot on it, and he's going to have to go back to safety. Hits the cue ball, hits the object ball, drives the cue ball to the rail, and the safety completed. His inning at the table is completed. The score is 11-0. Mr. Balsis over Mr. Crane, who plays a safety, driving, as you saw, the 12 ball to the rail. So, it's 11-0 still. Mr. Balsis at the table. He may elect a safety, a scratch, or shoot out. Be sure that you understand the reason for this safety play. When you're stuck and you can't do anything else, this is your protection. He touched the object ball. Whoop, he didn't scratch. Whew, that was close, wasn't it? Didn't scratch. And it's 11-0 against him, so that he may safely play a safety or a scratch. Now, the thing that makes safety play so difficult here is when you hit that object ball, particularly from this distance away, you are likely to dislodge it. And any time you open up that cluster, you stand the chance of opening up the table for your opponent. And this, with these men, is a fate worse than death, because Mr. Balsis could get right up here and run 39 balls and in one stand, and that would be the end of the whole party.
2 ball in the corner combination.
2 ball combination. That's the one on the edge there. Oh, God. Isn't that a beautiful shot? Beautiful, beautiful shot. And listen, that a hand this appreciative audience gives them. All right, Mr. Crane has broken out of it. It's 11-2. Mr. Balsis over Mr. Crane, with Mr. Crane at the table on a run of 2. And the table well spread, as you see. Now watch Mr. Crane's position play. I think that he is probably as great a master of position play as there is in the United States today. That and strategy, defensive strategy. He will be thinking the whole table ahead. He probably has it pretty well plotted already, although he doesn't have too good a break ball at the moment. He might want to change that. That can change your strategy. If your break ball is set up, then sometimes you can plot the whole 14. See the draw? Actually, in watching Mr. Crane play, you get the impression that he's not especially great. He doesn't shoot anything too great. What I mean is he doesn't make the hard shots. And the reason for that is he's such a master at position play, he never has many hard shots to shoot. He arranges it that way. 3-time world champion, Irving Crane. The match with Joe Balsis this afternoon was such a tremendous defensive struggle. Popped up the cue ball a little bit there. Six ball in the corner. Notice the follow English. And it is 11-8, Mr. Balsis over Mr. Crane on a run of 8. Mr. Crane still at the table with a 13 ball, his object. Now, he'll probably use the 11 ball, either that or the 14 ball, as his break ball. Now we know it's not going to be the 11. That's the one that's about to be pocketed. So it is 11 to 10 on a run of 10. Mr. Crane clearing out the pockets there. This is not a gully table. It is a pocket table. And as a result, they clear those out to be sure that the ball doesn't go in there and pop back out again. If it should, it does not count as a ball scored. So they clean those out. They could pop up. Back. Going to use the 12 ball as his last shot and the 14 ball as his break shot.
13.
Beautifully played. Beautifully played. Ready to go with Mr. Crane in his run. Mr. Crane, who now leads, I saw that scoreboard correctly, and I did, 13 to 11 on a run of 13. 14 ball is break ball. He must get in and scatter up that rack, which he did. Very interesting to watch Mr. Crane. He very rarely slams into the rack the way some players will. You sometimes even wonder if he could shoot hard. But notice the break that he got on those balls. Now, he hardly touched that rack, and still see how well they're spread. This is not, incidentally, a game of powerful stroke. This is a delicate touch, a fine touch. 15 to 11, Mr. Crane on the run of 15.
8 ball.
This will be a pretty fine cut. But handles it and also breaks up his cluster a little better, so that now he can pick them off with ease. This afternoon, when these two men were playing, particularly in the later stages of the game, they got so they would hardly open that rack at all. They just pick up the strays out of the corners. They didn't want to be in the position of leaving too much if they missed. As a matter of fact, they played so close defensively that they each got themselves in positions from which they couldn't extricate themselves, and each lost his turn at the table as a result. All right, 17 to 11, Mr. Crane, on the run of 17.
18. 9 ball.
Actually, the rules of the game state that the player must state which ball he wants to play and in which pocket. But it is so obvious that all he has to do is call the ball, and in most cases, a good referee like Mr. Sterling will call it for him. Mr. Sterling, being the player that he is, pretty well knows how Mr. Crane wants to play this table, and he calls the balls, almost calls the game for him. Also, a good referee, such as, well, Mr. Oliver, when we were producing 10-20 back in 1959, can keep a game moving by calling the shot. It will tend to keep the players from dawdling. Combination here. Beautifully shot, beautifully shot. Sometimes these combinations are pretty certain, but they always shake me up a little bit. I can't shoot one in at a time, much less two.
23.
All right, table pretty well opened up. You may want to use the 7 ball as his break ball. That's the one just below and to the left of his cue ball.
34.
Now, of course, his hesitation here is, how does he get to the 2 and the 5, which he must play off, and still work in the position below the 7 so that he can come into the rack. Mr. Balsis watching with great interest right here. And he knows that Mr. Crane prefers to break alongside the rack rather than working at the top. He likes to shoot up actually down to the pockets. This is the foot rail toward which he is shooting. Now,
5 ball.
the side pocket, and there he is. Oh! completed his rack of balls. And the score right now is 27-11. Mr. Crane over Mr. Balsis on a run of 27 by Mr. Crane. Mr. Sterling racking the balls. In this, there is your score right there. Mr. Crane looking to see, they've lost one. What they will do in this rack is put the 15 ball at the apex and put the 1 and the 5 in the corners. The big numbered balls down at the bottom and the lower numbers up at the top. Pockets his ball and breaks up the rack just fairly well. Just fairly well. He doesn't have too much. Cue ball's the one right at the top there, the white one you see. And as you can see, unless he has a clear shot on the 4 ball, he's not in too good shape. And of course, this is something that can happen even to Crane, Mr. Crane, or Mr. Balsis. Doesn't make any difference how good you are. You get caught in these traps. And of course, the great thing in the experience of men like this is not to make an injudicious shot. You're trying two philosophies. There is a shot in the rack if you look hard enough, but don't try something foolish and open up the table. And the 4 ball it is. Good shot. That was from a difficult angle. Now, as you see, he has better position, but he still has to open up that cluster a little bit. See him looking at it? He may want to come into it right now.
30. 13 ball.
Apparently going to play the 13 and then come in. There he does. There he does. No, he mustn't get locked up in there. He isn't just great. Again. It's 31-11, incidentally, on the run of 31, continuous run. And Mr. Crane's turn at the table. In this afternoon's game, where he beat Mr. Balsis, he was badly behind, but had a long run, and thus far has had the longest run of the tournament, 98 balls, in one of the early games. Good shot. Good. Long, difficult shot. Long, difficult shot. Now he has a little more room to maneuver. 32-11 on the run of 32. Incidentally, so you'll understand how this tournament works, it is set up the same way the Masters tournament in bowling is. A winners and losers bracket. The entire field is set up and the seeds made. Then you play until you lose. When you lose, you go into the losers bracket. If you lose once more, you're eliminated. And eventually, the winner of the losers bracket, who is Mr. Balsis, plays the winner of the winners bracket, who is Mr. Crane. And Mr. Crane put Mr. Balsis into the losers bracket this afternoon.
33.
All right. He's lined up on the 12 ball. And he's calling for the bridge. Watch this now. Watch this. They play all their position and everything else, the English and everything else with this thing, just as though it were their hands. The skill of these men is simply unbelievable. If you have never had an opportunity to watch people of this caliber play, by all means try to someday. There, look at that. Look at that. Combination. 8 ball. And that makes it 35-11, Mr. Crane, on the run of 35, continuous run.
15 ball, 6 ball. 36.
Good position now, as you see. Might want to use the 15 ball
1 ball.
as his break ball.
37. 9 ball.
This is where Mr. Crane looks the greatest, when he's working this bottom rail this way. Just everything looks so simple. At this phase of the game, position play, isn't that beautiful? And follows into position behind the 15 ball, which will be his break ball. And so, Mr. Crane will attempt to go through the whack again. With the score now, 41-11. Mr. Crane over Mr. Balsis on a run of 41. Mr. Crane again, reminder, has had the high run for this tournament, 98. How many can they run? In exhibition, Willie Mosconi ran 526. Beautiful. Beautiful. Whoops, whoops, whoops. All right. I thought for a moment there he might scratch. It's 42-11. Mr. Crane over Mr. Balsis on a run of 42. Mr. Crane at the table. And the trick with these men of this caliber particularly, is not so much what the score is, but more important, keep that other fellow in his seat. Don't let him get on the floor, because you know that if he does, you're not talking now about somebody that can run 15 or 20 or 25 and miss. You're talking about somebody that can run right through 150 points with one turn at the table. Mr. Crane beat Ed Kelly 150 to -3 in getting to the finals in 10 innings. He doesn't have just a whole lot, even though, as you can see, that cluster is pretty well separated.
8-ball combination.
Combination 8 off the 6. Oh my God. Not off the 6 at all. Holy mackerel. So complicated, I don't even know how it went in, or how many he hit in the process. Holy mackerel. And as you can see, they're a little bit better spread around. He has 10 ball in a good position, or the 4 ball for a break ball. 4 is the one just to the left and a little below his cue ball. 10 ball's the one over to the right.
44, 5-ball.
Here, he must be careful not to foul. If he touches anything, object ball or the cue ball, anything with his clothing or any part of the cue except the tip, he fouls, it's a scratch, he loses his turn at the table. Look at this little jam up here. Oh, beautifully done. Kind of job up there with 3 of them in the opening of that pocket. It's 46-11, incidentally. Mr. Crane on a continuous run of 46. And Mr. Balsis at this point is
13 ball
going through the combination, 13 off the 4. Didn't quite drop. 47-11 on the continuous run of 47.
7 ball. 48.
Now, as to this business of winner and loser's bracket, if Mr. Crane wins this first game, he being out of the winner's bracket, that's it. He wins the tournament. If Mr. Balsis wins, let's wait until he shoots this. All right.
49.
Mr. Balsis wins, being the loser's bracket, then they must have a second game, and that would determine, the winner of that would determine the champion.
50.
Isn't that a fine touch? Isn't that a fine touch? They sometimes just ease them along so softly you wonder if they'll even make it. has the 10 ball there left as his break ball if he chooses to use it. Also has the 12 ball there. I have a feeling he's going to shoot the 10 ball, shoot it off.
52.
And probably use the 12 ball as his break ball.
53.
Notice him cleaning out the pockets there.
14 ball. 54. 9 ball. 55.
Follows into almost perfect position. And there you have it, 55-11. Mr. Crane over Mr. Balsis. Will be back with more of the first U.S. Open Pocket Billiard Championship in just one moment. Mr. Crane, 12 ball, his break ball. Pockets it, opens up the cluster pretty well, I think. Yes, I think so. He has two around him, but they're not frozen in as you see. He's kind of obscuring you a little bit. But as you can see, he has room to maneuver. And it's the 14 ball up in the corner. Isn't it beautiful the way they roll it right down? I don't know about you, but anything over a third of the distance of this table, with me, it just isn't about to make it. He has a break ball if he wants it in the 11 ball.
6 ball. 59.
That's it, but he's rolling toward right there. And at the moment, Mr. Balsis here. And at this point, things are beginning to get a little worrisome.
60.
It is now 60-11 on a continuous run of by Mr. Crane, and no immediate signs of faltering. Although Mr. Crane, as you can see, has a kind of a tight little group there. And things are not just absolutely great at the moment. He's kind of flirting with the idea of a combination there. But that's a three-way combination.
13 ball.
And he's going to play the 13 straight in. I didn't know whether or not he could. From this angle, it's a little hard to tell whether or not the ball is free. 13 obviously was, but it looked to me as though it might be bound a little bit.
62. 15 ball.
Now he can pick these off one at a time.
4 ball.
4 ball he's going to take.
63.
Mr. Sterling cleaning out the pockets for him. Sometimes a player will like to have a referee do that. Oftentimes he prefers to do it himself. He doesn't want to be interrupted in his run. And most of the play, as you see, occurs at the foot of the table. 64-11 on a run of 64 by Mr. Crane. Apparently going to go down and tend to his netting on this 9 ball. Again, see, he's trying to be so careful not to foul. He doesn't want to touch the 2 ball there.
66.
Once in a while you'll see them just kind of do a downward motion with their cue, and that means stop, don't go too far. In the cue ball, of course, in the position play.
2 ball. 68.
Well, this is some run. This is some run. If he can just position himself now on the 11 ball, and he can. Look at that. Look at that. But percentage of cognoscenti in this audience here tonight. Most of them players' wives or relatives, and they appreciate the tremendous skill that is being demonstrated here as Mr. Crane leads Mr. Balsis in the championship game, 69-11 on a continuous run of 69 points. Now, 70th point. Has he left himself anything? Yes.
Eight ball.
71-11 on a run of 71 by Mr. Crane. One of the great strategists of the game. Thinks way ahead on the plotting of his table, not only offensively, but defensively. Opened them up pretty well. 73-11. 6 ball could be a break ball. Now, look at him waving it up. He wants as much distance toward the foot of the table as he can get there. Give him the closest shot he can get. The idea with these fellows is not to show how many great shots they can make, but to line up just as many easy ones as they possibly can.
75.
Use the bridge for the 10 ball. The one just to the left is the one he might want to use as his break ball, the 6 ball right there.
76.
He's lined up on the 12 if he wants it. We're now measuring to how he wants to line up. If he wants to get position on the 13 and the 9. And look at Mr. Balsis. This is the agony of this game, sitting there. So there goes his break ball. He could use the 12 ball if he wanted to. That's the one over on the left with the big stripe. Second from the left there.
7 ball.
This did. I don't know what this might have done to his strategy. Put the 9 over against the 3 there. And they almost look frozen to me. There he separated them. But he didn't. They went right back together again. Right back together again. Oh, let's see what this does. It's difficult to see whether or not they're frozen, but it looks as though they may be. And if they are, this could be trouble. The score, incidentally, is 80-11 on a run of 80 points by Mr. Crane. He's within 18 of his record high run for the tournament thus far. There's of course, a combination possibility here, but it seems to me from the angle at which he has to shoot that this is going to be pretty tough if he elects to try it. He's going to try it. Oh, beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? Always out of it. And it's 81-11 now, 82-11. On a run of 82. Now let's see what kind of position he can get on his break ball. Beautiful. Beautiful. The audience tells you that. All right, Joe Wilson speaking to you from the Grand Ballroom of the Sherman Hotel, where we are watching the U.S. Open Pocket Billiards Championship with Irving Crane, finalist, out of the winner's bracket at the table. Pocketing his 84th ball and opening, as you see, that table beautifully. Normally, no, not normally, let's say oftentimes, these players will speed up their action as their run increases, as they grow increasingly in stroke. Sometimes Mr. Moscone particularly, who is probably as great an exponent of running balls as this game has ever known, would practically be running around the table at this point. But you notice Mr. Crane doesn't seem to have increased his speed very much. He plays, if not cautiously, certainly wisely. Watch, he doesn't fire that 11 ball back there. He didn't. If he had touched that, it's a ball. He'd lose a point for a scratch and have to stand. As it is, it's 9 to 11. Mr. Crane over Mr. Balsis with a continuous run of 89. It's 90 now. Within 8 of record run in an earlier game in this tournament. Mr. Crane, three-time world champion in 1942, 46, and most recently in 1995. Excellent position play, as we said, and an unerring eye for his opponent. This is an excellent position player also, but we may never find out.
One ball.
Although it's a 150 points yet, 90 to 11.
91.
Hasn't set it well, doesn't he?
92. 11 ball.
Mr. Sterling has called the 11 ball. That's the head of the table, and he was looking around. Carefully doesn't fire on the 14. He didn't.
93.
A check. Sometimes a little difficult to tell blue from green. Matter of fact, it wasn't until I knew there was.
14 ball. 94.
94 to 11. A run of 94. He's within 4 of his record run for this tournament. It's not a record for all. This one.
5 ball.
Apparently going to the 10 ball as his break. 1 ball to on the side. To play back to on the 10 for the break. Apparently Mr. Crane didn't get position. That's it, the ball. Break, and he has a little distance between him, and he also has the sub-what triangle. Doesn't quite the margin to hit. His lead is 97 to 98. But he just see him? This is a very, very ways and ways of billiards. This is a sports crowd. Previous run This is a kind of a fine cut that he's going to have to make on this. It might present something of a problem in getting just the angle he wants on the 12 ball. There's quite a distance apart there, as you can see. He's going to have to be careful, too, with the cut he'll have to put on the floor that he doesn't scratch in the upper right-hand corner. No problem there. No problem there. Beautifully shot. Beautifully shot. This is the U.S. Open Pocket Billiards Tournament from the Grand Ballroom of the Sherman Hotel, sponsored by the Billiard Congress of America. And this is Mr. Irving Crane at the table on a run of 111. He leads by 100 points, 111 to 11. And he is... There is just an example of the things we were talking about that can happen. He didn't scratch, but he didn't miss it by much either. And he is close to the rail, as you see, so that shooting off that rail is going to present a problem, see? This makes it not only difficult to stroke your shot, but also to get the English you want, particularly if you wanted a follow English.
113.
Well, that made it look pretty easy, didn't it? 113 to 11. He leads by 102 points. The game is a total of 150 points. First man to reach it. It doesn't make any difference if the other man doesn't have his inning at the table. First one to get there takes the prize, which incidentally is $2,500 and a silver bowl. Runner-up money, $1,500 and a silver bowl. And the right to claim the U.S. Open Pocket Billiards Championship for the year 1966. And pride with these men is a tremendous factor. Terrific cut on this, or so it looks from here. So, all right. Wouldn't scratch on it. Boy, that was a delicate shot. I think there's this great pride, a feeling of pride in accomplishment where these men, as any group of professional athletes I've ever known, they almost play it for
11 ball.
well, just anything, just to compete.
115.
115 to 11 on a continuous run at the table by Mr. Irving Crane. Now has the 15 ball to shoot at and a kind of a tight little cluster there. He's kind of in company there. I think he may have a play on the 9 ball. But as you can see, he has a lot of friends. Very close friends. But he's not frozen by any matter of means. From my angle, I don't see any shot but the 9. But as I say, this is not a true angle. His problem, number one, is to make this shot without fouling. He'll have to, if he takes the 9, he'll have to try a difficult thumb bridge in all probability, which always gives you the possibility of fouling and also does not give you a good firm base. And then there's the question of how you come back into position for the next shot. See him shooting off his thumb? Didn't foul, didn't scratch. He's still alive. Boy, that was a good shot. That was a good shot. All right, it's 118 to 11. Mr. Crane over Mr. Balsis. Mr. Crane still at the table. Those are the knees of Mr. Balsis that you see in the background there. And that's about as much as we've seen of Mr. Balsis. He is sweating out the agonies of the gods at the moment, waiting for something to happen to make Mr. Crane miss or get locked up or something to happen. At this moment, any kind of a miracle, even the smallest, would be welcome. It's 120 to 11, 30 points away from winning this game, and if he could run out 150 points, then, friends, you'd really be seeing something. We've been seeing something as it is, but a win on a run like that.
14 ball.
Look at the English on that. The force follow. Beautiful. For example, Ralph Greenleaf had a tournament high in Detroit in 1929 of 126. Andrew Ponzi in a match in New York, the record is 153. Benny Allen, tournament in New York, 125. Mr. Crane has just run 122. He's only 3 off the Benny Allen record, 4 off the Ralph Greenleaf record. George Kelly, a tournament in Minneapolis, high run, 125. And it's 122 to 11. Lead of 111 points. But the big thing now with Mr. Crane is, can he stay at the table and just shut out Mr. Balsis? Shut him out in that chair and never let him get on the floor again except to offer congratulations. Look at the force draw on that.
123.
Looks as though he... I wonder what he is going to use as his break ball here. He has the 10, but the 8 and the 2 appear to me, at any rate, to be frozen. And if he shoots off the 10...
8 ball, 2 ball, 2 ball.
2, the 2 combination here. No, there was no combination. As you saw, he shot directly in. The angle that I have here can't be too sure on these things. I thought he'd have to use a combination, put it back into the other pocket at the bottom. As it is, he is in beautiful shape. The run is 125. And the score is 125 to 11. Mr. Crane over Mr. Balsis. And even Mr. Balsis is showing a look of appreciation as much as you can when something like this is being thrown at you. 125 to 11. And Irving Crane, three-time world champion, who many thought might be a little too old for this kind of competition. All right, pocketed his ball, 126th point. He has the table pretty well opened up, it would seem. Certainly he has good distribution. He's kind of close to the whale, as you see there, which will make stroking his next point a little difficult. And it's going to have to be across the table in all probability, unless he chooses to play the four ball, which would give him a little better purchase on the rail.
Combination, 9 ball.
9 ball combination. Oh boy, and gets the 3 ball along with it. Along with it. 2 for the price of 1. And it is 128 to 11. Use of the bridge now. Oops. On the 11 ball.
129.
129, 21 points from total victory. And remember, Mr. Crane, coming out of the winner's bracket, has only to win this game. Mr. Balsis, from the loser's bracket, would have to win this one and then win the playoff.
130.
In essence, what would happen would be Mr. Crane would go into the loser's bracket and they would play for the championship from that. As you joined us late, you seed down the middle, then as long as you keep winning, you keep moving up in the winner's half. If you lose, you go into the loser's side and play until you're beaten. Mr. Balsis hasn't been beaten on that yet. Mr. Crane put him in the loser's bracket in a match this afternoon, which he won 150 to 143 in 14 innings. 132 to 11, 121 point advantage. And Mr. Balsis now realizes that even if he got there, he would certainly have to run balls as he almost never did before in his life. 133 to 11, 17 away. Boy. To go through the rack again. He has 7 on the table. Now, 6. It's 134. He needs 16 points, so he needs the 5 balls here and 11 in the next rack. There are 14 in a rack. 135 to 11 on a continuous run at the table by Mr. Irving Crane of 135 on a flat-footed start.
1 ball. 136.
He could use either the 2 or the 8 ball for his break ball. The 13 looks to me as though it's in the rack. And this is a decision that has to be made. 7 ball is closest to him. That's the 13 in the foreground. In the background, the black one is the 8 ball, and over to the right of it, the 2 ball. He's going to play off the 7 ball.
137.
It's fascinating to watch the players. Look at them in the background. Watch Mr. Crane. They're learning, too. They're learning, too. And listen to this audience. Not a murmur.
138.
All right, 138 to 11. on a run of 138. 2 balls going to be his break ball. Let's see where he stops. Look at that. Look at that. Leaving Mr. Balsis, who has been talking good-naturedly to Mr. Crane. What else can he do? He's trailing 139 to 11. And the only solace he might gather from this is he's done it to others in his time. Irving Crane, 3-time world champion, leading in the U.S. Open Pocket Billiard Championships 139 to 11 on a continuous run. The 2, his break ball. Pockets it. He's opened them up pretty well. Yes, the 3 ball is his object ball. Look out! Oh, no. You couldn't see him. You're looking at the ball that almost scratched, but you should have seen him looking so shaken up. He hasn't recovered yet. He just sort of grabbed his hair and he slammed down his cue because he's out of position. He's out of position. It's 141 to 11. He leads by 130 points. Minute 142 to 11. Now, look at him. Look at him. This afternoon in the match with Mr. Balsis, when he went over and sat down after he had missed and opened up the table to Mr. Balsis, and Mr. Balsis just charged out. He could hardly wait to get there. He almost fell down. He was so anxious to get to the table. And Mr. Crane was just wiping the perspiration off of him. Somebody said to Joe Persida, who was refereeing here during this tournament, "Joe, you must get ulcers playing this game." And Persida said, "Oh, no. Perish, such a horrible thought." But the pressure is almost unbelievable. 143, 7 to go.
144.
144. Well, watch this well. If he runs 150...
145.
It's been done before, but it doesn't happen often. And look at Mr. Balsis at this point. All you can do is shrug. What else? Mr. Crane at the table with 5 to make. Fairly good distribution on the table. 146 to 11.
1 ball.
$147. 148 playing for 2.
At the Lakeshore Athletic Club, these fans are anxiously awaiting the start of the rematch between Willie Mosconi and Jimmy Karras. Last fall in ABC's Wide World of Sports, You saw Jimmy Karras defeat Willie Mosconi, and this is the rematch today. Our expert on the program is Roy Kimman, a former three-time intercollegiate champion. And Roy, let's talk about 14-1 continuous pocket billiards, how it's played.
Thank you, Bill. It is indeed 14-1 continuous play, and the main object of this game is to pocket 14 balls, leaving the 15th ball in such a position that you can make it on a subsequent shot, carry them into the rack, break up the rack, and continue your run from there.
Okay, now the game is 125, and it's conceivable that one man might start out and run 125 and win, right?
It is indeed. We have two outstanding players today, and to borrow a phrase, this is going to be a horse race.
Okay, fine, Roy. We'll be waiting your comments. And now let's meet our contestants. First of all, the retired world champion 15 times. He won the world championship, the one and only Willie Mosconi. Willie? Let's talk for a moment with you, Willie. I know you're kind of anxious for a little revenge.
Well, not actually. We in competition always look forward to trying to get even with the fellow the next time.
You know, I said retired. Now, you are not really retired, are you?
Well, I am retired from competition, but not from exhibition work. I still travel around the country and do quite a bit of it.
Okay, well, there's a lot at stake here today. A purse of $5,000, $3,500 to the winner, $1,500 to the loser, and I know you want the big one. Okay.
Fine.
Okay. Good luck to you, Willie Mosconi. And now a man who won the world championship 4 times, a man who held both the national and world title in the same year, the only man ever to do that, and he is Jimmy Karras. Jimmy, who won this match a year ago in New York. Jimmy, good to see you again. I know you'd like to repeat what you did at the New York Athletic Club last fall.
I sure would, Bill.
What was the score of that game, you remember?
125 to 82.
Okay, do you feel pretty good? I know you've been doing a lot of traveling.
Oh, yeah. Feels pretty good.
Okay, get warmed up because we're just about ready to get underway with the start of the National Invitational Pocket Billiards Championship from Chicago on ABC's Wide World of Sports. We'll be back with more from the National Invitational Pocket Billiards Championship in just a moment. The Gillette Safety Razor Company is bringing you this segment of ABC's Wide World of Sports. All set to get underway now, and both players will lag to see who starts this game off. They will shoot the cue ball down to this end, and the one that comes closest to the head rail will be the winner, and he will have the option of deciding who will break. And Mosconi wins the lag, and he designates Karras to make the break. All right, let's have our expert here, Roy Kimman, make an explanation of that.
This means that Karras will break the ball safe, and actually Willie will have the first shot at attempting to run the balls.
Okay, now those 2 balls you saw hitting the rail made it a legal break, and so Karras has left Mosconi at the head end of the table, and not too much to shoot at, really.
No, a fairly difficult shot there. I think he'll pocket that okay, but, well, he missed.
He did indeed, and that is quite an unusual thing for Mosconi. And that is an inning for Willie Mosconi without scoring anything. So Jimmy Karras, making a beautiful break, leaving Mosconi with not too much to shoot at, now has an opportunity himself, and he gets one. Now remember, the game is 125. Also, he will